Republican Senator Ron Johnson appeared on CNN where he tried to defend the fake elector scheme, and it was a disaster. You know, I've seen multiple people in response to the clip we're about to watch point out the fact that it seems like Republican politicians get so used to appearing on Fox News where they'll just be given softballs and any nonsense talking points won't be challenged. And so when they finally appear on a network that will ask actual questions, everything falls apart. They collapse. And indeed, that was the case here with Ron Johnson. So Ron Johnson represents Wisconsin. He's a senator from Wisconsin, and CNN host Caitlin Collins, because of that, found it relevant, as it is, to ask him about this recent news. The 10 fake electors, as CNN reports from Wisconsin, disavowed their attempt to overturn Donald Trump's defeat in 2020, recognized the legitimacy of President Joe Biden's victory, and pledged not to serve as real electors in 2024 or in any election when Trump is on the ballot, or to act as sham electors in any future election as part of a civil lawsuit settlement announced on Wednesday. And Ron Johnson, as you'll see, just started spouting off nonsense in response to that.
Before I let you go, Senator, I do want to ask about this. Obviously, it's your home state. 10 Republicans who signed paperwork falsely claiming that Trump won there in the 2020 election have now agreed to withdraw that paperwork, acknowledge that Joe Biden did win the election, and also agree to not serve as an elector in the 2024 election or in any election where Trump is on the ballot. But there is one person who still serves, Robert Spindell, on a state agency that is responsible for administering elections and certifying the results. Do you think that he should resign from that, given the role he played in the fake elector scheme?
No, again, there was an active court case. There are all kinds of irregularities in Wisconsin in the 2020 election. And in order to make sure that the case just wasn't determined to be moot, they had to have an alternate slate of electors, just like Democrats have done repeatedly in all kinds of different states. There was nothing untoward about what they did. There was nothing illegal about what they did. They were just an alternate slate of electors.
They were going to court. They had $2.4 million on the line in damages if they lost this case at trial. That's why
I know
they've
been
harassed. But to say, you're saying that they
I
did
realize
nothing
Democrats
wrong?
have used the civil courts to harass these poor individuals. It's unfortunate. It's a travesty. But that's what Democrats do. They view politics as a blood sport. It was unfortunate. These folks did nothing different than what many Democrats have done in many states
They certainly
throughout our
did,
history.
Senator. I mean, there were multiple slates of fake electors, including in your home state. They're acknowledging that they were playing a role in trying to improperly overturn the election. That's what they said.
They got themselves out of a nuisance lawsuit. They agreed to settle a nuisance lawsuit that never should have been brought.
So you think it's
It was
fine
a
that
harassment
someone
lawsuit. It was a travesty of justice.
You think it's fine that someone who tried to overturn a legitimate election is still on a board
Democrat
that
electors
helps
have done that
certifies?
Repeatedly. Democrats have done the same thing.
In
Republicans
Wisconsin,
never
there's
tried to
been
criminalize it.
fake slates of electors?
No, it's happened in different states. I didn't come prepared to give you the exact states, but it's happened repeatedly. It has happened repeatedly. Just go check the books.
Which books?
I mean, there have been alternate slates of electors by Democrat electors in our history. Again, this wasn't what this interview is going to be about. I'll come and I'll provide you the information, but I'm absolutely certain about that.
I look forward to your office sending that information. We'll publish it if it's accurate. Senator Ron Johnson, a busy day ahead on Capitol Hill. Thank you for your time tonight.
That's brutal. Well, there was fake electors in past elections. Okay, which ones? I have no idea. Now, he said that with so much confidence that surely he had to be referring to something, right? Before breaking down what kind of the right-wing talking point is that I think he's referring to. It's not accurate, but it's what they point to. Let me just clearly and unequivocally say up front, no, there's no precedent for doing what Trump tried to do. And if you're sort of fuzzy on exactly what the fake elector scheme was, I'll remind you of that in more depth in just a second. But this was a nationwide attempt to defraud and disenfranchise millions of voters to overturn an election like we've never seen in the country before. And one of the elements of it was this attempt to pass off electors as the lawfully elected ones when they weren't. And so Ron Johnson, I just want to be clear before giving you the example that he's probably referencing. nothing's happened like that before. And so he's just completely being dishonest, or he is clueless. Now, when you do dive into trying to figure out what are people out there who are maybe kind of better at perpetuating these nonsense talking points, they have it more straight in their head than Ron Johnson had it there. You have people citing an example from 1960 in the election between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Here's media outlining that situation. After Hawaii counted its votes, Richard Nixon was ahead pending a recount, which ended up putting Kennedy over the top. However, that recount was still ongoing by the time Hawaii needed to send its slate of electors to Congress. Both the Democrats and the Republicans sent their slates of electors with the understanding that the slate for the actual winner would be recognized. Hawaii's results were moot by that point, as Kennedy already won enough electoral votes. In 2020, however, fake electors for Trump in multiple states signed fraudulent papers claiming Trump won the state after the results in those states had already been determined and certified. So yes, both had to do with slates of electors, but that's about it. No similarity, especially when talking about the legality of the two situations, just not comparable whatsoever. One was a situation where the actual vote counting had gone on so long that both slates were sent to be ready for either outcome, because the recount was going on and it could go either way. The 2020 situation was after the states had already certified the results and determined the slate of electors that would be sent. So just an outrageous comparison, if that's what Ron Johnson was referring to, or maybe he's just heard vaguely people say, well, it's happened before. No, it hasn't. Now, as a reminder, what was the fake elector scheme? Well, as all of you guys probably know, presidents are elected by the Electoral College. That means that electors are sent by the states to cast their vote for the candidate that won in each state. And what Trump and his allies did was have individuals sign fraudulent forms claiming they were the, quote, duly elected and lawful electors, end quote, of swing states when they weren't, then tried to get Mike Pence to count those instead of the actual lawful electors. Prosecutors have the documents, they have the witnesses, a pretty clear-cut element of the case, which is why I focus on it so much. Seems so obviously illegal. Now, if you're still struggling to understand why it's not okay within a democracy to have that take place, imagine if that was allowed in every election. Each candidate just gets people to sign documents saying they're the actual lawful electors, and then the election comes down to just simply who the vice president decides to go with. I'm going to pick this slate of electors to count. That would be chaos. And by the way, now Ron Johnson's trying to act like it's all totally fine. And come on, that was no big deal. And he's not concerned about it being illegal whatsoever. But when the news initially broke that he may have had some involvement and he was asked about it, panic would ensue, as you'll see in this moment.
Moving on to the alternate slate of electors. Of course, we're going to talk about that. And I know you've said publicly that it's a non-issue what happened with the slate of electors and your involvement.
I had no involvement. I received either 3 texts and I sent 2 texts, or the other way around. I mean, my lack of involvement was seconds worth of texting.
But that is still involvement.
But I didn't even know. I was texted that something had to be delivered to the vice president. I didn't know what it was, and was there somebody that could help arrange delivery? So then I talked to my chief of staff, and he took care of it. We found out that the vice president wasn't accepting anything. He said, can't deliver anything. That was the end of the story.
But if he would have said yes?
You can't call that involvement.
But if he would have said yes, go ahead and deliver it, even though you didn't know what it was?
What would you do if you get a call? If you get a call from the president of the United States lawyer wanting to get something to the vice president?
But you didn't know what it was.
Again,
wouldn't you want to inquire what something is to hand to the vice president of the United States during such a critical time?
I didn't hand anything to the president. I wasn't involved.
But if he would have said sure.
I wasn't involved. You can make it seem I wasn't involved. A couple texts, a few seconds of my time. I couldn't even remember what I had done, which is why it took a little while to piece it all together. But we pieced it all together. I received 3 texts and I sent 2, or vice versa.
Was Sean Riley working rogue? Did he go rogue? Was he working on his
No,
own?
he was my new chief of staff. He'd worked for me earlier. He'd been in the White House. He knew these people. Somebody was asking him to arrange a delivery of something to the vice president. He contacted the people that he knew for the vice president, said, we're not accepting anything. End of story.
So he knew what he was doing, even though no one knew what that thing was.
We weren't doing anything. We were just, were we supposed to deliver something or not? Did the vice president want it? The vice president didn't. We didn't deliver anything. It's a complete nonsense. I know the news media is trying to turn it into a story.
So that was back in 2022 when he was getting pressed on it, and it would be a disaster every time. There was one time where he left the Capitol and reporters were asking him, and he acted like he was taking a phone call, but it didn't really look like a real phone call. Also, the quote, "My lack of involvement was seconds worth of texting." My lack of involvement was a little involvement. So obviously, if he thought nothing was wrong with trying to pass off phony electors as the lawful ones, then he wouldn't be acting so weird in interviews like that, so panicked. Just one more time. My lack of involvement was seconds worth of texting, was involvement. Just cracking me up. And this is what we see time and time again. Republicans, right after January 6th, for example, were almost all saying it was bad what Trump did, condemning it. But then they had some time to figure out, oh, the base actually doesn't feel that way. And so then they started perpetuating these bonkers conspiracy theories about it being an FBI inside job, and it was really just a peaceful protest, and Trump had nothing to do with it. But if he did, he didn't do anything wrong. And if it was violent, it was the FBI agents. But if it wasn't FBI, it was peaceful. And the FBI agents were the ones who did the violence, but the people who arrested for violence are political prisoners. All very strange. And same thing with all of Trump's attempts to stay in power, like the fake elector scheme. Now Republicans either act like none of that happened or pretend like it was no big deal. Whereas previously, as we watched, Ron Johnson was desperately trying to make clear he wasn't involved with such a scheme, obviously indicating he knows how big of a deal it is. I do think this segment is a perfect segment to show once again a clip that I've shown in the past from episode 1 of Mocha's with MAGA, because it really illustrates one of the issues that we're up against. I've been stunned as I've talked to more and more Trump supporters at rallies or for Mocha's with MAGA by how few of them have ever even heard of any of the details of Trump's attempts to overturn the election. They genuinely think he was just indicted for saying the election was stolen. Trump doesn't think that. He says it, but they actually believe it. And it shows you the media echo chamber that they're living in. And same thing as I've shown you with Trump's call for the termination of the Constitution. Many of the people who support Trump the most seem to know the least about what he's doing and saying day to day, which is remarkable. If I was wearing a hat with someone's name on it, I would make sure, or with their slogan on it, I would make sure I'm keeping up with what they're doing so I know that I actually stand for what they stand for. So here was, as an example of this, my attempt to explain the fake elector scheme to two Trump supporters. I'm just saying, are you okay with a president, if they lose an election technically, you agree the technical loss went to Trump, right? Through the Electoral College? Do we agree? Even if you think it was stolen. I'm just saying technically
Honestly,
Biden won.
technically, I question it due to the fact of what happened in our own
No,
city,
I got that.
in
I
our
got that.
own
I got that. I'm
county.
saying
So I
Mike Pence
question
certified on January 6th votes that said Electoral College.
I'm in our city, in Cedar Park.
I'm not talking about that.
No, I understand that, but this is the point that I'm trying to make. So in Cedar Park, they certified an election, them knowing that people got the wrong ballots. So if that
was
happened
just-
in
yeah.
our city, within our county,
not what I was at, yeah.
then how do I know that it didn't happen nationwide?
I just meant like Biden became the president. He is the one who got the Electoral College, even if you think it was fraudulent. So I'm saying if someone loses an election, but they're the president, they're running for re-election as Trump was, and they're the president, is it appropriate for them to then get people to say, not the electors that the state sent, but just random people to sign fraudulent forms that aren't the lawful ones that the state create, and just
But we're waiting for it to be proven innocent.
we're the
or
electors.
proven innocent or guilty right
if
now.
if this indeed happened, we are the electors. I don't even think they deny they tried to do this. They just don't think it's against the law, and we should be counted instead of the actual ones. That would throw our Constitution to a crisis mode, because you have to have a lawful process, and you can't go outside of that. You have to be through the process we have. The state sends the electors get counted on December 14th. Then on January 6th, Congress certifies it.
I know
You
you're
need
trying
that.
to compartmentalize certain things, and I understand people like to do that. However, when you see it from a smaller level, and as you see it go from the city to the county to the state to each state, I know for you,
rather difficult, as you could see there. And it's what we've talked about before. Either they don't know about the bad things Trump has said or done, like this historic moment where he tried to block the peaceful transfer of power. If you're going to say you support Trump, you got to know about at least what's being accused on that front. But so many haven't even heard about it who say they support him, or they hear about it and it's fake news, or they acknowledge it's not fake news. Trump definitely did that thing or said that thing, and it's totally fine. It's like when I said, hey, to a Trump supporter, what if Biden called for the termination of the Constitution? He said that would be horrible. Then I said, hey, here's Trump saying that. And he said, it's fine. Well, initially he said, nah, Trump never said that. Then he acknowledged if he did, then it would be fine. How do you deal with that? How do you pull somebody out of that? Now, by the way, I'm going on a holiday break after Christmas, and so we're working on another episode of Mochas with MAGA that I'll be able to upload while I'm gone. A little saved up content. Hopefully that will all come together and you'll have a holiday gift. Can you consider it that? More of what you saw in that clip in another episode of Mochas with MAGA. We'll see. Before you go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership to get the daily bonus show Monday through Friday. If you're not ready to become a member, that's fine. Just at least subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would be wonderful as well. Plus, follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief, and I'll talk to you all next time.